This is Flipping the Script podcast, the soon-to-be #1 leadership podcast for purpose-driven leaders and great guest experts who give us a unique insight into what leadership looks like behind the scenes. I'm Shalia Stafford, your host, and I'm committed to helping you lead your challenges using leadership strategies to gain new perspectives, fuel your growth, and transform the way you execute on your success. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today, Latisha Springer. She's a new friend of mine that we actually met through a volunteer experience that we both had at a LeaderCast event specifically focused on women. And it's something that united us because it's a core value that we have in helping other women succeed. She is a global relocation specialist, founder, and even more exciting, she is what's known as a Fortune 50 cubicle escape artist. Latisha, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Shalia. That entrance. Okay, I love it. I'm going to have to take you everywhere with me. Just to my intro.
We had a very unique experience when we met back at the LeaderCast experience where we were building bags for our guests coming. And it was a very spiritual moment for all the women who got together there, because as we were sitting there building these bags for the guests that were going to come and have the experience of understanding what it means to lead as a woman, we were sitting there sharing our stories, our vulnerabilities, our successes, our challenges. And that's when I heard your story. And your story really struck me, and it stayed with me for a year.
Aww.
And so much so that when we met again the following year at the same volunteer exhibit with LeaderCast, I couldn't help but want to share your story with the world.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I don't even know how we didn't stay in contact after that experience of, stuff in the bags and just kind of, sharing our deepest, darkest, we went deep, I think it was 5 or 6 ladies with us,
yes.
A group of us, strangers. We just met, but for some reason we felt really connected to each other and just opened up, and we're totally vulnerable about everything we'd been through and what we were going through now and our dreams and hopes and aspirations. Yeah, it was a really raw moment with complete strangers.
Yes, it was beautiful. And I really left there just having a spiritual connection with each of you. And for you, we connected because you did something that many of us always hope to do, but always fear doing. And that's you left your corporate America job, a very secure path, to start on an unsecure path.
Yeah, to say the least.
To say the least. So tell us a little bit more about those who aren't familiar with your journey. Where did it start? What got you to make that leap?
Yeah, sure. So I won't go too far back. I was born in, but I went to college for business. So I went to the University of North Florida in Jacksonville. I have a bachelor's in business management and a bachelor's in business marketing. At that time, I was working for UPS, United Parcel Service, for people who don't know. So I was unloading trucks on the midnight sort, and I was going to school during the day. I was also a mother. I had my daughter 5 days before my 21st birthday. So I was in my second year of college when I gave birth to my daughter, Zoe. And so in college, I was working at night, and my aunt or my ex-boyfriend's mom would keep my daughter. I'd put her to sleep before I left around 8 or 9 p.m. I'd put my daughter to sleep, go to work until about 6 or 7 in the morning, working in the warehouse of UPS. And then I would go home, nap for 2 hours, get my daughter, go to school, and just rinse and repeat, doing the same thing every day. I was basically living on 2 to 3 hours of sleep every day. But after I finished college, I relocated with UPS. So at the time I was living in Jacksonville, and I relocated to Orlando, Florida, still working in operations. But at that point I was in operations management, still working part-time. I did that for a little while. And then I told them that I needed a full-time job because it's difficult, to work a part-time job, even though I was working a lot of hours and the pay was decent. I had free medical benefits, which was all great, a part of working there. But I wanted to do more, and I went to college to do more than, manage the unloading and loading of trucks. No shade to anyone who's doing it. I love my job, and it was my favorite job there. But I had a responsibility to my daughter and myself and all of the years I put into college to do more than that. And so I was resigning. I was planning to quit, and I ended up meeting a guy who basically I connected with, who was working. He was the HR manager at the time, and he just happened to be doing a midnight sort visit, because no one ever comes on the midnight, because only crazy people work at night. So no one from the upper management team is ever there. But for some reason, he was there, and he and I just started talking. We connected, and he liked me, and he told me, "Oh, you're great. Like, wow, what do you do here?" And that's awesome. And then I broke the news that I actually just turned in my resignation. So my 2 weeks is up and I'll be leaving the company. And he said, "No way, you're not doing that. I have a job for you. Come see me in the morning when you get off." So he waited for me when I got off, and I went to his office. He was the director of human resources, which I didn't know. And he created a position for me working in human resources as a recruiter. And so I worked in recruiting and safety and things like that, kind of all encompassing. But I switched to working days at that time because I also wanted to be able to spend more time with my daughter and not working nights. I wanted to be home at night and stuff. So he gave me that. So I started working on the day shift. I was working in human resources, doing employee relations, safety, and all that stuff. I really loved that job. More importantly, I really loved working for, his name was Milton. I really loved working for Milton. It was a great experience. And a couple months into that, he's like, you're doing really good at this job, but I think you have a great personality. Like, you're sales all the way. You should work in sales. I'm going to introduce you to the director of sales, and you're going to go to sales. And I'm like, I am? I've never, he's like, there's a great opportunity, there's commission involved. Like, you can do really well. Like, you need to get a new car. You need to take, good care of your daughter. Like, she's going to want to go to college one day. Like, you need to transition out of this role and go into sales. So prior to that experience, he gave me the position of working with United Way as the loan executive. And so that gave me a lot of sales experience, because the loaned executive program, if you're not familiar, United Way does it. They partner with corporations, and basically the corporations loan out their employees, and they pay the employee's salary for that employee to then go work for United Way on campaigning and fundraising.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I was a UPS employee still, but I was loaned out to United Way. So I did that assignment. I think it was 3 to 4 months. I worked for United Way, helping them do campaign and fundraising. So I was going out and speaking with companies representing United Way, talking about what United Way does in the community, trying to raise funds and get money. So I was speaking in front of groups of hundreds of people, and it was just a really good experience for me, and helped me when I then transitioned back to UPS. When Milton said, "Okay, come on, we're going to go meet the director of sales." I met her. I guess they had already talked. So basically, I already had the job by the time I got back. So I then switched to business development, and I worked as an account executive, managing UPS accounts, helping clients, get all of their business needs done for shipping and solutions, technology solutions and shipping through UPS. I was their point of contact, and I did that for a few years. And actually, at that time, I had moved from Orlando to Tampa with that job. So I went from Jacksonville to Orlando to Tampa. I did that job for about 3 years with UPS. And then I transferred to Atlanta to the corporate office, because sales was it was a lot of work, a lot of hours. And at that time, my daughter was maybe 5 and 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that age range. So she was still really young. And, I was just working a lot. You're basically never really in an office. You're attached to your laptop. And so you're working like all the time. And so while I was making good money and it was a great experience and great learning opportunities, it was not the lifestyle I wanted, So I just got to a place where I wanted to do something more, I thought, in a corporate setting. I didn't want to be a road warrior anymore. I wanted to get an office job. And in the district, there aren't a lot of office jobs because most of the professional positions were at the corporate office, which was in Atlanta. And so I put in a request to transfer to Atlanta. At that point, I have a bachelor's in business management, a bachelor's in business marketing, years of operations experience. I also have human resources experience and business development experience, right? I'm saying this to say, they told me that they had no jobs for me in Atlanta.
Wow.
And that was the first excuse. And then the second one was that they lost my request to transfer. So I had to reapply for my transfer. And ultimately, it just came down to me going to Atlanta. I used my vacation time. I went to Atlanta. I interviewed with just random people I had found through the office email. I was just trying to find people who were located in Atlanta to help me connect with other people so that they could get me interviews. And I reached back out to Milton, who was the guy who brought me from the warehouse job to HR. And at that point, he had been promoted to a staff manager. And so he was working in and out of Atlanta. So he knew the human resources people in Atlanta. And they lined up some interviews for me during my vacation to interview at the corporate office. And so by the end of my weekend, I had accepted a position in the customer service centers, UPS customer service centers in Atlanta in the corporate office. And I gave notice to my job down in Florida that I accepted a new position. And they kind of did all the behind the scenes stuff to get me moved, basically to take me from my sales position because they weren't going to let me leave. I was one of their top salespeople and they didn't understand why I didn't want to stay there, why I wanted to do something else. So they just wanted me to stay. So I didn't do a lot of the work to get myself moved because my new manager at the Atlanta office basically did all the work. I didn't have to tell them why I was leaving. Atlanta basically told Florida, we're taking her. Here's her last day. Yeah, she's coming here. We've hired her in this position. Her start date is this. So then I moved myself to Atlanta. My daughter was finishing school. I just really wanted to wait for her to finish. So she finished.
How old was she at this point?
When we moved to Atlanta, my daughter was 6. My daughter was 6 when we moved to Atlanta, 2007. Is that right? Yep. I moved to Atlanta in 2007. My daughter was 6. She was born in 2001. So yeah, we moved here. She started in summer camp and all that stuff. I started in my new position. It was actually an engineering position, which I had no engineering experience. But for me, what got me the job was 1, the relationship. 2, they liked my energy. And 3, I'm a super nerd and I have an affinity for numbers. And so one of the questions that they asked was, how many packages per day does UPS ship? I didn't get the answer right, but I was closer than anyone has ever gotten, they said, because I had a general understanding of the operations because I had so many years in operations. So I know how many packages, approximately come through my building, and I know how many buildings there are, so I was able to get close. So for me, they told me that was one of the things that helped solidify the position. They knew they wanted me. And because I came with a background that was different than most of the people that were in corporate, because most people who work in corporate have never worked in operations. They have never done any other job. They get hired off the street and they come into a corporate position. So I was offering a different perspective on the company. So I worked as an engineer, industrial engineer, for about 3 years in that Atlanta location in Sandy Springs. And then I did a lot of different jobs in that role. I won't go into that. I get bored easily. So they kept me entertained by allowing me to get on different projects and do different things. I just wanted to learn as much as I could and see as much as I, just experience as much as I could. So they allowed me to do that and just, kind of let me just go, basically. But ultimately, I still wanted to do more. And I also wanted to get closer to my house. So I was living in Alpharetta in the suburbs north of Atlanta, and I was driving down to Atlanta every day. So it was about a 2-hour commute each way with traffic. It's only about 30 miles, but traffic is ridiculous here.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So it took a long time. So for me, it was a lifestyle change. At that time, my daughter was finishing elementary school. And I'd heard from other parents that, middle school is a challenge. So I wanted to be a little bit closer and to be able to be, just more involved. Yeah, more involved with my daughter. Because most of the time, by the time I got off of work, at the Atlanta office, I barely made it in time to pick her up from daycare before they closed. Like she was always the last kid to get picked up. And I had to drop her off early in the morning because I had to be to work, by 8 at the latest.
That's
So
what it looks like to be a working mother.
yeah. And I just didn't want that anymore. I needed to still work because I am a single mom. And at that point I had a house in Alpharetta. So, I have a mortgage, I have a kid to take care of. So I couldn't quit my job. But I did want to get some more of my life back. And so I decided that if I just didn't have to do that commute, it would make my life a lot easier and I would get back a lot of time, that I could spend with my daughter and doing other things. So I, again, went to my network, to people. And one of the guys that I was working with, at that time, he was no longer with the company or in the position with me, but I used to work for him. And he knew some people that worked in the Alpharetta location of UPS because he started there. He started at the Alpharetta location where I wanted to go. And so he reached out and gave a recommendation for me for a position in the Alpharetta location. So I interviewed and I got the job. And so then I transitioned to a role in the UPS's supply chain solutions, working as a transportation engineer. Again, for them, I was offering something different because at that point I've had, I have 2 bachelors, I have operations experience, I have human resources experience, business development, and industrial engineering. And so now I'm transitioning over to be a transportation engineer managing supply chain solutions, which was new for me, but hey, I was with it because it was literally walking distance from my house. It's actually funny because when they called me to tell me I got the job, that they wanted to offer me the job, I just said, I'll take it. And Mike, my old manager, he was like, don't you want to know how much we're offering to pay you and like what comes with it? I was like, nope, doesn't even matter. Like, I'm good. For me, it was just, I'll be closer to my daughter. So closer to home, so it didn't matter. I knew for me, I valued not the money, but the improvement in lifestyle. So I actually accepted that job without even knowing how much I knew I was going to get paid more because it was a higher grade than the grade that I was in. So I knew it would be more. So that was fine. So I accepted that position and I stayed in that role for a few years. And then I just kind of looked around and realized that I had a really great life. I had a house, I have a stable job. My daughter is in, top schools. We're not wanting for anything. I've got money in the bank, but I was absolutely bored, totally unsatisfied, unfulfilled. Like I had crafted the perfect life for someone else. It just wasn't me. And so I decided that I needed to make a change, like a drastic change. And so it was 2012 when I started plotting my exit. And I started in grad school. I wanted to get an MBA because I wanted to have a fallback, a plan B, because I felt like my background is business. I love business. And if for whatever reason I needed to get a corporate job, or even when I went into future endeavors as an entrepreneur, I wanted to have that business experience. And I wanted to have those 3 letters behind my name. Right. and the network of a strong alumni. So I got into UGA and University of Georgia. And so I went to the University of Georgia in their professional MBA program. And I finished in less than 2 years. I cash flowed it. I didn't want any debt. And so I was working full time still at UPS in that Alpharetta job, that cubicle every damn day. And not eating out. My mortgage was super low because I got a really cheap house in an amazing area. It was a foreclosure, so I had to do a lot of work myself, but I love all that stuff. So I did a lot of work. So my mortgage was really low, like under $600 a month for a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath home. So I had low living expenses. My daughter was now in middle school, so I didn't have daycare expenses. I was packing my lunch. Like I was living bare bones so that I could cash flow grad school. Yeah, that was beyond frugal, but it's okay because I knew that my plan was to finish my MBA and quit my corporate job. And so it was really important that I didn't have debt when I did that, or additional debt. I had my house. At that point, the only debt I had was my home. And I didn't want to get any more debt because I wanted to have the freedom to make decisions based on what I wanted and not my financial needs. So in 2015, I finished my MBA at UGA, and all within a 2-week time frame, I quit my job. I relocated to South America. I sold everything. I finished grad school, like everything finished like within 2 weeks. I bought 2 one-way tickets for me and my daughter to Santiago, Chile. And we stayed there for the summer. It was kind of like proof of concept. Would we like this life? What's it like living abroad? What's it like to travel? Because prior to that, we hadn't left the country. And so I was just kind of leading up to this, preparing my daughter. We would watch Parts Unknown and, all these Anthony Bourdain shows and travel shows and, just kind of dreaming, like, what would this be like? And what if we lived here? And what if we did this? And wow, wouldn't that be cool? And just kind of helping her kind of get on board with, we're really going to do this. Like, what would that look like for us? Because she was really hesitant. She was thinking, what about my friends? And I don't want to leave my school and, all the kids stuff.
And how old was she at this point?
When we left, she was in her freshman year of high school.
Oh my goodness. This must have been very terrifying for her and perhaps for many of the audience that's listening at the moment. We're thinking just quitting our jobs in itself sounds like a big leap to take. But not only did you quit your job, you went international.
Yeah, there was no other place to go. like I used to sit in my cubicle. I had nothing in my cubicle. By the time I got to my near departure date, there was nothing in my cubicle except my docking station for my laptop and a huge world map that I would just sit and stare at the world map all day while I worked in my cubicle. Like for me, that was all I wanted. And I'd be listening to podcasts of people traveling, listening to travel shows, like in my earbuds while I was working in my laptop, in my cubicle. Like that was the only thing I wanted to experience. And living in Alpharetta, we were like in a little bubble. I didn't like how my daughter was growing. Like I didn't like who she was becoming. The sense of entitlement, the limited worldview, the, bratty teenage American is what she was becoming. And so I just felt like I needed to shake up her world. She needed that. We needed it.
So tell me, why was travel so important to you?
Travel is important because I think it pushes you in every sense of the word. Like for a lot of people, they think, oh, it would be uncomfortable. What if you don't speak the language? What if you don't eat the food? What if you don't know anyone? All of those things, I think, are requirements for growth, and you can't get that in the safety of your daily routine and the safety of speaking the language. Like, I don't think, and perhaps you can dabble in some of those experiences, but nothing is going to shock your system and require you to grow leaps and bounds than being in a foreign place and making it happen. And I wanted that for myself. And I wanted that for my daughter. Like I wanted her to know that she could do anything and that anything was possible and that there was such a huge world outside of Alpharetta, Georgia in the US. I couldn't just show her on YouTube, or she needed to feel it, because so much of travel and these experiences is a feeling. I needed her to feel those experiences and have them. Like it's something she'll always have, these experiences.
You made a very bold leap of faith there, and it certainly has paid off for you. And it sounds like you were making moves very early on in your career. It's what I like to call investment moves into your career that allowed you to have the opportunity that when you came to that realization that this is it, I'm going to start preparing for it, that you could make that decision.
Yeah.
You were very diverse in the experiences that you had and where you worked. And that in itself can be a bit unsettling for us because we like to become experts in what we do. And anytime we jump into a new role with a different requirement, we have to continuously relearn how it is that we navigate our success. What was that like for you each time that you started within a new role that you had to learn how to be great at what you do? How do you think that shaped your ability to continue to grow, but then to get to that pivotal moment where you're like, you know what? I've had a successful career. I have diverse experience and I'm ready to take that leap and live the meaningful life that I want.
Well, you said something profound, Shalia, which I believe that experiences equal opportunity. So without these experiences, your choices are limited. And so for me, I learned early on that the more experiences I got, the more opportunities I have to do other things. And so that was the one thing driving me. The other thing is just personality trait, perhaps a flaw, some might say, is that I need diversity. I need change. Like I thrive in change. I thrive in the unknown. If things start getting normal and expected and regular, like I get bored and unentertained, and I just feel like I'm getting dumber. You know what I mean? So for me, I learned early on about myself is that I need change. I need things to be mixed up. For me, if I'm not learning, if I know everything already, there's no fun in that. You know? So I have to create opportunities for myself to do different things, to see different things, to meet different people. Like it's the diversity in those experiences that fills me. And it wasn't until I got older that this trait in me that was oftentimes called crazy and identified as a flaw, it's actually a benefit. And I view it as a benefit now, but I didn't always. This is why I got stuck in this corporate routine, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like you finish college, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids. Like this is what you're supposed to do. So I kind of got caught up in doing what I was supposed to do.
So talk to me a little bit about that. I'd love to unpack that. We tend to relate to that sentiment. We grow up and either our parents, our peers, or just in general, what we're hearing all around us tell us that we're supposed to live life a certain way. What was that programming, in essence, that you got, that you heard, that made you believe, I think I'm supposed to fit into this box? And then talk to us about the moment that you started to essentially unlearn some of this negative program and lead more with your heart and with the calling to life and what you're really supposed to be in the moment.
Yeah, well, I definitely had a lot of unlearning to do because I did not have the best of childhoods. And so I've actually been on my own since I was 16. So there was a lot of trial and error in this learning process. And so there were a lot of things that I had to unlearn, and habits and conditions and all of that stuff. But I think the biggest thing that was driving me was just that I wasn't happy. And also I think I fell into the stereotype because I was so much of a stereotype. Like I come from a broken home, alcoholism, abuse, all that, like I think so for me, I wanted to overcome all of that and appear to be successful and have overcome my background. So I'm going to do all the things I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to do them the best. I'm going to kill that shit. Like I'm going to be the best one as a non-stereotypical. I'm going to be so damn normal. Like that was my goal, was to be normal because I just never felt like I was. And so the goal for me was to always be normal so that I could be, accepted, and I can actually be, normal, because I've never had that. And once I became a mom, I wanted it even more because I wanted my daughter to have a normal life. I wanted her to have perceived stability and safety. And, my dream was to buy a house. Like I always admired people who have like friends from kindergarten. I never had that. My family was in the military and we moved a lot, and, just a tumultuous marriage my parents had, and moving all the time and going back and forth. I don't have longtime friends. I never stayed in a place, more than 2 years. And so I wanted my daughter to get to have friends for a really long time, like that they knew from school, and just this normal life is what I wanted. So I think I was driven by overcoming the idea of being a stereotype, and my daughter's a stereotype as well. Like I said, I'm a single mom. That relationship didn't work out. So I was even more driven to be normal and give her a normal life. I think that's really where all that came from. Well, I know that's where it came from for me. That's what was pushing me to do the normal thing.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think many times we run from being a statistic, and then we reach this pivotal moment of what's defined as success, and we find out that we are actually another statistic on the other end of the spectrum that we didn't realize prior to. We become part of those over 80% of people who hate their jobs and aren't living in their purpose. We don't get taught how and when to chase our dreams.
Yeah.
And what that journey looks like.
Yeah, I think it's so much of a personal journey. And I think we allow input from so many outside sources into this personal decision, and I think for me, it was just a moment of sitting and just looking around like, this is it? like, this is it. Like, I did all of this work, like working 2 jobs, like getting bachelor's and master's and career move after career move, like for this, to say that I have a car and a big house and whatever, like this is it.
That's what truly defines you as a leader, is that the impact that you're seeking to create isn't just in that materialistic aspects of life. It's you want to create true impact in those around you.
Yeah.
And that's starting off with your daughter and within yourself. And then it's this ripple effect all around you. And I see that in you. You are so giving of what you do and who you do it for, with your volunteering with different nonprofit organizations. And, there's a particular moment that stands out in our interactions recently when we were volunteering at LeaderCast.
Oh.
We were downstairs in the lounge for some of the guests that were coming in. And part of what our job was to do is to help them with their experience and guide them to where they were going. And in that, there was a man who had a crutch, and he was ordering coffee. And we were mid conversation, and it was just instinctively for you to go over to him and see if you could help him carry his coffee.
Oh, wow.
Little things like that where it's instinctive in you to just run and provide and offer assistance where you can, to give back to those who need it. So it was a very beautiful moment to see within you. It was one of those that really helped. Of course.
That's sweet. Yeah, I think that was one of so when I gave my resignation at UPS, a lot of people were like, it didn't make sense. For a lot of people, It didn't make sense. Like, what are you doing? Like, how can you, and what are you going to do? Because I didn't have another job I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have anywhere to live in Santiago until like 2 days before I left. Like, I had a one-way ticket. Like, there were so many question marks when people were asking all these questions about what's next and what are you going to do? And I had no answers. And so for a lot of people, it didn't make sense. And so the only thing I could tell them was that I didn't feel like I was doing anything. Like, I wasn't contributing to anything. I was, doing all these reports and working with higher ups and, again, making good money and maybe helping a few people in their career, I guess. But I didn't feel like I was making any kind of an impact. And I wanted to make a contribution to something, that wasn't tied to money or a title, or because I just found that to be unfulfilling. And so I wanted to do something more. And I just felt like the way to do that was to go into the world. And I started telling people, my tagline was, I want to work in the world, not in a cubicle. I felt so limited by that space, and I just wanted to go out. And I think maybe a month before I left, I visited a friend's church, and the message for the day was, God is on the move. Will you follow him? And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not a religious person, but that spoke to my soul. And that was just what I needed to hear, because it was such a big leap of faith, like all these questions and unknowns and having absolutely really no plan. I like to say I do loose plans. But for me, that just kind of confirmed that I was doing the right thing. And from that point on, I just made a commitment to go where I felt led. And I felt like, I didn't know why, but I felt like I was supposed to be outside of the US. I felt like I was supposed to be traveling and gone. I felt like I was supposed to be on the move, going somewhere.
Tell us about that moment, because For those of us who daydream about traveling and are those like you listening on their headphones at work, dreaming of that
Run from your
day,
cubicle. No.
run. What was it like, that moment that you stepped off the plane, that first year? Tell us about that first year that you launched into it. What were your biggest challenges, your biggest fears, the things that we typically don't hear about?
Yeah.
That you had to overcome and that you had to experience in order to lead you into what would come to be your next year and your new growth.
Yeah. So I started the journey in Santiago, Chile, like I said, because actually in UGA's MBA program, the reason, or one of the main reasons I chose UGA's professional MBA program is because they have an international residency that allows their professional MBA people to go abroad and learn about doing business in other countries. And so for my senior year, the location was Santiago, Chile and Argentina. So we went to South America for 2.5 weeks. So going into that trip, I thought where I wanted to live was Argentina. So I had apartments lined up, to go visit while I was there doing my international residency. And all this stuff lined up because I just knew Argentina was going to be it, because I had Googled and, done all this research and it looked amazing. But when I got there, I found that I didn't actually like Argentina. And I just loved Chile. And so I knew when I was headed back to the US at the end of the residency that I was starting in Chile, that's where I was coming. And I didn't know, prior to that, I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I was quitting my job and I was going somewhere. I hadn't had a location. But because of just, golly, Chile, it's very much a vibe. So it's hard to describe, but it's such a cool place. The people are amazing. The food, the culture, the architecture, just the vibrancy of that city just spoke to me. So I knew that's where we were going. So at the end of the residency, when I returned to Atlanta, that's when I resigned. Everything just kind of happened. I bought my one-way ticket and my daughter and I left like 3 days after my graduation ceremony. And just going into Chile, it was happy. Stepping off the plane. It's a relief. It's happiness. There was such a burden lifted, even though, again, like I didn't really have a plan. I met a few connections in Santiago, but I really didn't know anyone. Like I just met these people. So I didn't have any connections. I didn't know a lot of things. But I was just so at peace. And so the first 3 months, actually, I didn't even work. I just detoxed for 3 months. Like I spent time with my kid. Like we had 2 apartments. The first apartment we lived in had no Wi-Fi, no TV, nothing. Like we were in the middle of the city with no connection really to the outside world. We just had to go out and experience the mountains and the beaches and everything that Chile has to offer. And when we went back to our apartment at night, we played cards, we did puzzles, we like joked around on the camera. Like we just spent time together. And at this time, my daughter was 15. And so anyone who has a teenager, especially a teenage girl, recognizes that that's not the easiest time for mother-daughter bonding.
That's a bold move in itself.
But again, like the whole premise was to shake up her damn world. And so I knew that it needed to be totally different than when she was used to. But we just loved it. And it was funny because just a few weeks ago, she was telling me that was one of her best experiences, that going into it, she was so mad and so bored at first, because we didn't have Wi-Fi and like, why'd you give us an apartment that didn't have Wi-Fi? Like, now what am I going to do with myself type stuff. But being disconnected was just so great. And she was, just fondly reminiscing about us doing puzzles on the floor and like napping until 2 p.m. Like we were like in complete sloth mode. And we were just eating good food and surrounded by great people. And I literally went through just a huge detox emotionally, mentally, physically. Like my skin was clearing up. Like I had a big breakout at first, but just all the toxins coming out of my body because the food is so clean there. The food, the water, just everything is just fresh. So I went through a lot of detoxing in the first couple months. But then, it was great. Just a great way to live. And so I knew from that experience that I wanted to continue traveling. So I had given myself 3 months. That was the summer. My daughter had finished 8th grade. And so we took the summer to stay in Chile. And then we had to return because I hadn't developed a plan yet for what I was going to do for her schooling. So we had to go back. So we came back to Atlanta for her to do her freshman year. And that's when freshman year of high school, I'm sorry. And that's when I set out to craft a plan for us to just stay gone indefinitely until we decided we wanted to be back. And at that point, my daughter was then on board. So it wasn't me pulling her, dragging, kicking, and screaming like I did the first time. And so she agreed that she would be happy with going as well, as long as we went to Belgium. Like that was the deal. Because when she was in 5th grade, she did a book report on Belgium and she learned about the chocolate and, all of that stuff, mostly the chocolate, mostly the food, the chocolate, the waffles. She enjoys food like her mom. So for her, as long as we got to go to Belgium, she was down to go. And so cool. I said, we'll do it. Belgium's on the list. Like, we'll make sure we visit Belgium. So I spent that year working and like just odd jobs. I didn't really go to corporate. I was not going back to corporate.
So what were you doing for work at that time?
Odds and end jobs, consulting. I did a lot of temp work, project-based stuff, anything I needed to do.
A way to make it work.
Yeah. Anything I needed to do. Yeah. Driving Lyft, cleaning houses, like all of it. I've done all of it.
How did that feel? Because for most of us, we take so much pride in becoming experts in our craft that we tend to forget the artwork of what it is to be able to do anything to live the life that you want and to live it in purpose. How was it to go from here you are highly academic, you have an extraordinarily background, a professional experience in your career, you've moved up the ladder, and now you've made the shift. How was that on your mind and your heart?
I think I was being so much led by my heart. It didn't even really matter what was happening in my mind, to be honest. I didn't give much thought to that. I didn't care anymore about what I thought or what was expected or what I was supposed to do. Even to myself, the internal talk about, well, really, should I do this? Like, what am I supposed to? I didn't do any of that. I was just so strongly led by my heart that none of the other stuff really mattered. For me, as long as I was able to make sure my daughter was fed and we had a roof over our head, I was doing my job. And I also learned during that time how important it was that I'm happy. So how important it was to my role as a mom that I had happiness. I didn't realize how I was impacting my daughter by working a job and having a life that I wasn't happy with, how much that affected our relationship and what she was modeling as a, growing woman herself. And that wasn't something I wanted to model. And so I liked who I was becoming as an independent, and I liked who she was becoming from seeing me being independent and her becoming independent as well. And so I wasn't willing to go back to that. So for me, it didn't matter what I had to do. I wasn't going to regress. So for a lot of people, it might have looked like driving Lyft and whatever was a step back or a step down or whatever. But for me, it wasn't, because I had taken such a leap in lifestyle and happiness and all of that, for me, it would have been a downgrade to go back to corporate. So I wasn't willing to do that.
So you come in with this very distinct global lens, right? Going beyond the borders and the barriers, as you say. What would you say has been the biggest thing that you learned about culture and diversity that we don't have here in the United States?
Good grief. We only have an hour, Shalia. I always tell people because they ask what was the best experience or what was the biggest thing you learned, whatever. There's just so much. There are so many rich experiences and so much you learn just from being out there. You don't even have to have a plan of what you'll learn or what you seek to learn. You just land somewhere in a foreign place and you're going to learn so much. And so I think for me, maybe the biggest thing I learned was that, and it's super cliche, but it's the truth, that we're actually not very different. Yes, maybe we're in different countries and different religions and different color, but fundamentally we're all the same. And so I found myself having the same conversations with different people on a different continent that I just had last month in Africa, I think from the travel, I learned just how connected we are as individuals and how alike we actually are. And I think, again, the striking thing for me was having these same conversations with different people in different cultures. Like for so many people, family is fundamental, struggling with career, balancing motherhood and work. Like that's not unique to America. That's not unique to white women or Black women.
Yes.
That's everywhere. And so just to learn that these people in these far-flung places are having the same experiences that I have or people that I know have had was really profound for me, because I think the world, and mostly media, especially American media, wants us to believe that we're all so different, that we have nothing in common. And like, whatever could you talk about with someone in Egypt next to the pyramid? Like, what do you all have in common? But we have so much in common. And I think travel also had me lose my faith. I didn't have much faith anyway, but lose my faith in news outlets and media and the American government. I won't get into that, but just what you see with your own eyes, to see that what they portray as these third world countries and foreign places, it's not what it's perceived to be. It's not how it's perceived to be. So I just tell people, turn off the TV, buy a plane ticket, and go into the world. And you can start small, like start where you are. There's so many people, especially freaking Americans, who have never even left the city where they were born. Like, leave your city, like start small. You don't have to go to Asia. Like, take a day trip to a city outside of the area where you're from. The biggest thing is like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Force yourself to have new experiences, to stretch beyond what you know to be your normal. So it doesn't require a passport.
I love what you just said, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. What does that process look like? How would you explain that process in the phases that you peel back the layers? When you first start to step into being uncomfortable, it's going to feel like this and it won't be perfect. And then it leads into this and then it leads into that. How would you say that that's been for you?
Gosh, I've never thought of that, honestly. I think the biggest thing that people have to do if they're going to get with this idea of being uncomfortable and stretching themselves and really growing as a person, you have to get okay with the unknown. Like, you're not going to have the answers for everything. I guarantee. There are going to be so many things that you just can't know, and Google can't answer for you. So I think just getting comfortable with the idea that you won't know everything. I think so many people, if they don't have an answer, they just won't move. They just stay where they are. If they don't know what's going to happen next, or, if they go this way, what's there? Like, just go. You'll figure it out. Like, you have to have enough confidence in yourself and your own ability to know that whatever comes your way, you'll figure it out. And so I think the first step is just getting comfortable with the unknowns, because regardless of whether you decide to travel abroad or not, the idea of taking a leap and kind of following your heart, there are going to be a lot of question marks. And so if you're not comfortable with being in unknown circumstances, you're not going to be able to move forward to the next step, which I would say the next step is probably the planning. Because as much as people like to believe that I'm not a planner, especially my family, I drive them crazy. I do develop loose plans, but because I know from following my heart and going where I feel led, I know that things happen the way they're supposed to. And I like to leave room for the universe to kind of, take me where I need to be or to put me where I'm supposed to be. So I don't do, hard and fast plans. I like to do loose plans. For example, I made a plan to go to Santiago, Chile. I'm going to be there from May 15th until August 1st. I would like to visit these monuments and, from Google, because I'm researching, I want to see that. I want to see this. I want to see that. So maybe then on each day, I plan to do one or two things. I don't fill my agenda with this, and this. And then after that, we're going to do this and we're going to eat here. No, we just go to the one place, we see, oh, are there any food places around? Who do we meet that has recommendations on the best places to eat around here? Other places that we should see while we're in the area that weren't on Google, that we just talked to a stranger who was the alpaca herder. And he said, while you're over here, you should definitely go to this place that I've never heard of and isn't on Yelp. So I like to leave room in my plans for the universe to come through, whatever that universe is to you, or whatever higher source that is to you, but something else bigger than you should be guiding the majority of your steps. And so I say, in the research process, make sure you leave room for things to happen as they're supposed to, because you can think you're the best planner in the world, but nothing is ever going to be worked out at your hands as good as it will be if you just allow the universe to do some of the work, most of the work.
I love that. It reminds me about something that I constantly talk to with other mentees that I have. We tend to live in a very fear-based society, and it's normal to feel that at times. But when it controls us, that's where it starts to become an unhealthy way to live our lives. And instead of being scared of what could happen, I think the biggest fear is not having the tools and the awareness to respond to it when it does. Having that confidence and trust within ourselves is key to that. One of the things that I hear in your story that really stand out is you invested heavily in yourself in the beginning. Not only in your experiences, but in your education and how you were willing to really grow your expertise in every level of where you were at. And in doing so, with confidence who you are and what you're capable of. And when the time and if something happens, you know where to turn to, you know what to do.
Well, not exactly, Shalia, because there's so much I don't know. But no, I appreciate you saying that. But I think the bigger thing is I'm confident that if I don't know where to go or what to do, I'll figure it out. Yeah. Like that's the bigger thing for me. I have confidence that I will figure it out because there's still so much I don't know.
You have so many creative talents and skill sets about you. You also have the education behind you and the ability to set yourself loose to do what your heart guides you to do in your creative way, which leads me to ask the question, what do you want to do when you grow up?
I hope to never grow up would be in my initial answer, which my daughter hates. But I think what I tell people now is that I do women's work. For me, I feel very strongly about benefiting women worldwide and making an impact. I think if I don't know what vehicle that'll come through, because like you said, I have various interests and talents, as you say, but I have a lot of things that I do and can do, and I'm sure will do. Like I definitely haven't finished learning, so I don't know what the venture will look like or what vehicle I will use. But ultimately, I want to have made an impact, specifically on women and children, is where I feel most compassionate, most led. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is I really want to help women, especially moms, to design their lives and not just fall into it or, have their life made for them. I want them to take ownership of their future, of their life, of their careers, and, just be their best self, not just, I think as women, we oftentimes keep ourselves so small. And I think a lot of that is fear-based. But, there's probably a lot of, other things too. But I have found that a lot of it is fear-based. And so I would like to help women use that fear as fuel, to kind of push them to do more and see more. And again, just outside of whatever the barrier or perceived barriers might be, whether that's money or borders or whatever, I think for everything, there is a solution. So if I can help in some way, help them find that solution or help them have the confidence that they can find that solution. I want to be able to do that for them to live bigger, bolder lives, not only for themselves, but for their children and other people's children. Because whether you have children or not, as a woman, naturally we impact children and smaller people, so whether you're a mom or not, you're impacting future generations. And so, like I said before, we owe it to them, to do more, to be our best, to live as big as we can, to go big, not to be settling for small. It's all women. I always say it begins and ends with women. Whether you're a mom or not, that has nothing to do with it. Everything is dependent on the success of women. And so for me, I know that if I can impact the lives of women, I can impact the world and the future generations to come. Everything starts and ends with women.
You said that in 2019, this was your 4th year as an independent, and you've learned quite a few lessons about the highs and lows that come with being an entrepreneur. And you know what? Quite frankly, we don't talk about those highs and lows enough. For someone that's looking to step out of the corporate world and design their life, what would you say is the biggest lessons that you've learned as an entrepreneur?
I think the biggest thing for me is people. Everything comes back to people and relationships. And in America, this isn't as as popular. But from living abroad for 3 years, you get to pick up these other cultures and the way other people live. And so very much outside of the US, it's so much about community and helping each other and just supporting each other. And so I learned about myself that I crave that and I need that. I was so used to not having that village around me, not having that support system, not having strangers just want to see me win. I had these experiences while living abroad. And so to come back to the US, regardless of what I do, for me, it always comes back to relationships and people. So I set out to make genuine connections with people. I don't care about what your title is or how much money you make or how much money I might make from engaging with you. If I don't feel a connection to you, I don't even have to be able to explain what it is I'm not feeling about you or why I don't want to continue a conversation or a relationship. If I'm not feeling it, it's done. There's no move. So for me, it's very much about people and connections and energy and trusting my gut are the things that I rely heavily on now. And so regardless of what realm that's in, whether that's my business life, my personal life, anything I go into, I'm led by, I say my heart, but that's also my gut, my intuition. I listen to those things and I go. If I'm in a space and it's beautiful and everyone seems to be having a great time, but it just doesn't feel right to me, I'm out. I don't owe anyone an explanation of why I don't want to continue a relationship or why I don't want to stay here. I'm leaving. So I've gotten very firm in how I feel and what I will and won't do or allow in my space and in my life. Just valuing myself more, I think, is the bigger thing. Valuing myself, valuing the relationships around me and the people around me, because so much of the way I am filled is by people and interaction and the energy of others, which I didn't know about myself from, just going the corporate route and living that traditional normal life. I never really experienced that. So for me, just being filled by others, I know that I need that. And so connections are a big part of how I make decisions in all areas.
Did you feel like you could be the authentic you when you were in corporate America?
Absolutely not. No way. Which was an even bigger part because, right, you can't be led by your heart and be phony, So for me, there was no way I could have stayed in that environment because I had such a strong commitment to myself to go where I felt led and make decisions based on how I felt. The corporate environment just wouldn't fit that vision for what I had of my life. And so as much as maybe I might have wanted to stay, I couldn't have, because my commitment to how I wanted to live my life was bigger than what corporate could offer me.
That's beautiful.
Oh, thanks. That reminds me. That was the other thing I started telling people. Because again, everyone had questions like, what the hell are you doing? What do you mean you're
Yeah.
leaving your job? Like,
Yes.
like I was there for almost 2 decades, and that with that corporation, and I had a lot of great experiences and, opportunities and all of that. And I appreciate it. But for me, like, this was bigger than money. This was bigger than a title. Like, none of that was enough for me anymore. And I didn't know what I needed or what I could get. I just knew I wasn't going to get it where I was, So for me, it was just that there was nothing more they could give me or do for me. They actually offered me a promotion when I resigned. Excuse me, but I declined it. And I also turned down multiple 6-figure jobs finishing up grad school because, as a part of finishing the program, they have recruiters contacting you and all that stuff to try to help line up a job for you for when you finish the program. But I turned down those positions because at that point, there was nothing money could do for me. I had money, and to that point, in full disclosure, like, obviously I was working, I had gotten used to living frugally. So I did cash flow my grad school program, which was $53,000.
Wow.
I did cash flow that. And then I was also saving money each month. So when I left my job, I had about $10,000 in the bank cash. Plus I had pulled a home equity line of credit on my home that I owned. So I had $45,000 sitting in reserve that I could pull on if I had to. So in total, I had, almost $60,000 that I knew if something went wrong, I had a little bit of time to figure it out. Like, I had a cash cushion to kind of give me time to figure out what I was doing until I worked it out.
And was this part of the process of you planning to leave corporate America? You started to make this big strategic plan to make sure that it would work out?
Absolutely, for sure. Like, that was the goal in anything I did. Like, even buying my house, like, I qualified for $400,000. I don't remember. It was ridiculous. I'm like, there's no way I'm getting that big ass house. It's just me and my daughter. Like, I don't need a $400,000 house in Alpharetta. Like, that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So even strategically thinking about where will my home be, yes, I do qualify for $400,000, but no, I don't want that much house. So even that process of, what's the smallest house I could get in this area I want to live in because I want my daughter to go to this school? What's the smallest house I can get? I actually went through 4 realtors trying to find someone who understood what I was trying to do and supported it. They were telling me, like, you're not going to get anything small. Like, this is Alpharetta. Like, the houses are big. Like, you're not going to get a small house. Nothing's under $250,000. Like, you're not going to find that. You have to compromise on your first home because this is my first home. It's your first home. Everyone compromises on their first home. I wasn't. I had a school that I wanted my daughter to go to. I was only looking in that school zone. I wanted to be under $100,000, which is absolutely ridiculous. I know, but I wanted to buy a house for under $100,000. I wanted to be in a specific school zone, and really everything else I didn't really care about. I did want 3 bedrooms just for resale purposes. But other than that, I was open, so, but it was nearly impossible because the area I was looking to buy homes, the average home sells for $250,000 to $300,000. So again, all the realtors thought I was crazy. And so it was very difficult to find a realtor, but ultimately I did find a great lady, and I did buy a foreclosure, 3 bedrooms, nice. 2.5 bath, $80,500.
Wow.
In the school zone that I wanted. Yep. So I was thinking strategically from the beginning because I knew what my end goal was, because it looked crazy and impulsive to other people, but I had actually been planning this since 2011, 2012, what my next moves were going to be and what I wanted my life to look like going forward. So every decision I was making from 2011-ish timeframe was, but I'm going to quit my job and live abroad. Again, I didn't know what I was going to do, what it was going to look like, any of that. But I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So all decisions had to fit align with that vision. Oh, and that reminds me, if I could go back to something you said too about
absolutely
being strategic and getting these experiences and training myself. So even though I didn't know what I was going to do abroad, I knew that my background was business and what I love is business. And so from the international experience that I had with UGA, I knew that international business was going to be a big thing. It is a big thing everywhere else. It's kind of a big thing in America, but not really. But in all other countries, having international experience, it puts you ahead of other people. It is a differentiator. It is seen as a bonus. And it's becoming more so here in the US as well, but it's like a big deal in other countries that you have these international experiences. So for me, I just felt like it was a win-win. Even if I quit my job and I only lived abroad for a year because I ran out of money or I hated it or whatever, I'm going back with, I've got all this experience in corporate, I've got this education, plus I've got, 70 cities, 14 countries on 4 continents under my belt. Like, I think for a lot of people, that could still be valuable. And so I just viewed it as a win-win. I didn't feel like I was giving up anything or losing anything. I left on good terms in my corporate job. Everything was good. So what's the worst that could happen? I have to go back and get a corporate job. That literally is the worst thing that could happen. But I figure, like, what's the worst that can happen, or the worst that could happen? I would have to come back and get a job. So what? Like, I can find a job.
Exactly. Because
I had nothing to lose.
It sounds like you had these rooted guiding values that help you prepare to step into this new journey that you had been planning for what it sounds like quite a while.
Yeah. But I'm one of those people that I like to move in silence. So I like to be about it, not talk about it. And so I normally don't tell people what I'm doing or what I'm working on or what I'm planning. Like, the only people who even knew that I was planning to do this was my sister and my brother-in-law. They're the closest to me. So they knew that I had been working on this and this is what I was planning to do. But for everyone else from the outside, they're like, oh my God, you just woke up and decided you're going to quit your job and sell all your crap and live abroad. Like, who does that? So it looked extra crazy to a lot of people. But I think oftentimes if you share too much with people, they like to pee on your parade. And I didn't want any of that. Like, I was committed to my vision for my life, and I didn't want any outside feedback from anyone. And I was willing to deal with whatever consequences came from that.
What is your number one priority today?
Freedom. That's it. That's all I want in any situation. Like, I want to be able to make decisions based on what I want and how I feel and where I want to be, not what I have to do or what I'm supposed to do. It's freedom. That's it for everything. That's my driving, my guiding light for everything is freedom. Not the money, not the status, not the title. It's freedom. After you've experienced freedom, you just can't go back. I just can't go back to that life, that way of life, by any means necessary.
But it's still very hard work to be able to maintain everything that we do as entrepreneurs.
Yes. Is it ever? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I digressed. The highs and the lows of entrepreneurship. Yes. I think this goes back to, again, being comfortable with unknowns. I think for people who need to know the next step is there before every move, wouldn't be comfortable with entrepreneurship, because so much of what we do is based on, okay, I don't know how this is going to happen, but this is what I feel I need to do. And this is what's best for me or for my business, or this is the direction I need to go, even though I don't know what's going to happen, or you just need to trust that the stair is there. I think that was a Martin Luther King quote, but anyway, you have to trust that if you step out, you know that there's something's going to be there. You don't know what it is, but you're good. And I think for a lot of people, that takes a lot of courage that they just can't muster. But I think if you can get beyond that, you can handle entrepreneurship. If you have faith in yourself and faith in whatever being that you believe in, you're good. It all works out. There are highs and lows all the time. And not to mention, I think a part of entrepreneurship is recognizing that even these perceived lows aren't actually lows. And there's so much to be gained in these lows, and getting yourself out of those lows to see, okay, what am I supposed to be learning in this moment?
What was your most challenging low that you've experienced in your life so far?
In my life?
In your life.
Good grief. Gosh. I would probably say returning to the US.
Oh,
to be honest. Yeah. And I've had a rough life, so that says a lot.
Yeah, it does.
But I think I actually just had this realization last week, listening to a podcast, The School of Greatness. Awesome podcast. I love him. I can't remember who he was interviewing right now off the top of my head, but he just wrote a book. Dang it. It was a good book too. Shoot. Anyway, he wrote a book and he was sharing basically how a lot of people view depression as like sad times in your life. You go through depression when you're sad or have a death or a loss of something. But for a lot of people, especially overachievers like myself, you experience Great Depression once you set this really big goal for yourself and then you achieve it. And then you're like, well, now what do I do?
What's next?
Yeah, what's next? What do I do now? Like I had this huge goal that I was working on for 5-6 years, crafting, the execution of this. I'm going to make this happen. And then I did it. And then it was like, womp, womp, womp. Like I had nothing else to kind of work for and live for and strive for, So I definitely slumped into a big depression when I came back here. And the other thing is too, I think a part of that was driven because when I was living abroad, I was living in North Africa and I had a family living in my home here in Alpharetta. I'd rented it out to them. And long story short, they decided they were going to stop paying rent. And then they decided they weren't going to get out of my house. So the reason I had to come back here was to evict them. So I actually had a ticket from Morocco to Santiago, but I had to change that ticket from Santiago to Atlanta because I had to come to evict these tenants who had been staying here for months and just were not going to get out. So I think a part of the reason that it was so traumatic was because it wasn't my plan, it wasn't what I wanted to do. And that process took so freaking long that by the time it was done, the whole tenant process, it was almost time for my daughter to start preparing for college. And so I didn't leave. And so we ended up just staying. She needed to, take the SAT. Right. And we were talking about dual enrollment and, essays and all things she needed to do here, maybe doing some internships and stuff like that. So I felt like I needed to stay here by the time all of that was over. So all in all, I've been here a year in the US with no departure, which for me is very difficult. I have not been in the US this long for the last 4 years. And so for me, it was really traumatic and heartbreaking and just a really sad time in my life. And I was depressed for a long time. Like I just didn't want to do anything. Like I didn't want to be here. I don't like the way life is here. This idea of work all the time. And it's like a claim to fame or claim to status. Just tell someone you're busy.
Yes.
I had just gotten used to living a different kind of life that I came to love. And the American way of life just is not the way for me. And I didn't see how I could be in America, but live in an un-American way. It just seemed impossible to me because it's a constant fight. It's a battle. Like you're literally every moment of being here is a fight to stand strong in your values and your commitment to the life you want to live, not the life you're supposed to live here. And so it took me a long time to kind of get past that and get up and be like, hell no, like I've conquered way more than this. Like, yeah, I have to be here, but I'm going to make this amazing anyway. Like, I'm not going to just crumble now. Like I've come way too far to let this be the end, So, but yeah, that was returning to the US was definitely the most difficult. I think one more thing. The other thing that made it difficult is that being in America is very lonely. We have a very individualistic society. And I had gotten so used to my friends and what I call my family now. Like I've gotten so used to that community around me. A lot of it was missing my friends, missing my village. I've been a single mom for forever, but for that time abroad, I had support with my daughter and other people looking out and helping and just this family network that have never had before. And again, going back to childhood and not having a good childhood and being on my own since a teenager, I just never really had that family status.
Yes.
And I had that while I was abroad. Like these strangers treated me as family, took my daughter and I in and just, loved on us and poured into us and just amazing stranger encounters becoming family, and I miss my family. I miss my family when I'm here.
And it's such an enriching experience to have the ability to truly say, what that feels like, to have a community of people around you that
Who
truly
genuinely care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how has it been for you as an entrepreneur? It's really important for us to try to build those communities around us.
I'm definitely working on, it's a continuous working process, building up that tribe. And you and I talked about it before, even seeing each other again. I'm like, how do we not stay in contact? Like, but just being so much more intentional about maintaining these relationships with people that I do feel connected with, or that I, just genuinely vibe with, being so much more intentional about maintaining those relationships, even if it's just a random text every week, like being, hey, beautiful, hope you have a great day, just trying to put more effort, because it requires more effort here until we, trying to get into the habit of having these relationships and then needing them, because again, like I said, I didn't know that I needed this until I had it consistently. So now I know that I need this. So for me, it's about being intentional about showing people how it could be, the community that we could have, the ways that we can collaborate and support each other, like how that feels. And really it's just giving with no expectation, supporting with not expecting to get it in return, which means sometimes it's disappointing, but it's less disappointing when you're not expecting someone to do the same for you. So I'm just really open in my interactions with people. Like, I don't know what it will be, where it will go, what it will lead to, but I don't care. I'm going to be in this moment and just enjoy what it is right now. And so I think even in entrepreneurship, or really even more so in entrepreneurship, and building these, you meet people all the time. Like, you're always out, you're always going to events, networking events and brunches and whatever else. You're always going to things and meeting people. And I always make a commitment to myself to just be present and be open. Like, that's my morning mantra. Usually includes, I am open. Whatever the other things around it might be, I always include I am open, because I just want to be open to whatever it might be, whatever it might turn into. Just being open and intentional is really my goal.
So networking can feel awkward at times. We also have this idea that when we go network, we're going to meet someone who's just like us. Either they're an introvert, they're an extrovert, they love all the same hobbies, they have the same why as we do. How do you go about interacting with those who have differences than you?
I think, two things that come to mind. Two things that travel taught me, which is why I always encourage people to travel. Again, even if it's just outside your city, but go somewhere. Two things. So the first is the ability to talk to strangers. So after being abroad for 3 years, especially living in countries where I don't even speak the language, for me, I don't have a problem talking to someone I don't know. Like, I think I may have had that reservation before. I mean, I've always been very social, but I have none of that now, because when you're in a foreign place, you have to rely on locals and people that you don't know. And just, especially when you're by yourself, you're going to be by yourself forever in that country if you never talk to people. And so for me, just being comfortable with talking to strangers isn't a thing now, because I've had so many experiences where I've had to do that in foreign and uncomfortable places. The other thing that travel has helped me with is embracing differences. Like, I don't want to have friends that look just like me, talk like me, have the same background as me. I learned from being in these other places with people that I seemingly had absolutely nothing in common with, that I have so much to learn from them and so much to gain from these interactions with people that I have absolutely nothing in common with. But then you also find that you do have stuff in common with them. So it's learning the skill of digging a little bit deeper to find out what your commonalities are, because they're there. And so that's a skill that I've been able to master while traveling and living abroad. Like, I know we have something in common. Like, let's just keep talking. We'll find it. Or let's go do something together. Like, it's going to come out, And I think a lot of times too, the place where people go wrong with networking is that they go in with like this expectation of, okay, I'm going to get 5 business cards today. I'm going to connect with 3 people who are in my industry, and I'm going to reach out to 2, and one of them I'm going to have lunch with. Like, just relax. Know what I mean? Yeah, go in, no expectations, be open to whatever it might be. Don't go in with this set agenda. And you can tell who the agenda people are. Hi, nice to meet you. Let me give you my card. Just relax is what I tell people. Relax, be genuine. And when it comes down to it anyway, I think what business people forget, and even entrepreneurs too, they forget that in business, people want to do business with people that they like. Nobody cares how many degrees you have and what your GPA was. Like, do they like you? Are you an ass? It doesn't matter how qualified you are. If you're not good, fun to work with, or not even nice to work with, if you're not good to work with, you have bad energy, or just, I don't know, a bunch of drama happening in your life, like no one's going to want to work with you. They don't care what school you went to or who your dad is. Maybe who your dad is, but normally none of that matters. Like, they want to know, do they like you? So your mission in any networking situation, any setting that is deemed networking, should be to be likable, not to get a business card or whatever. You can't connect, or nothing will happen until you've proven your likability factor. And the other thing I'll add to that too is that I think people also miss opportunities to network because they think networking happens at networking events. Networking happens everywhere, at the grocery store, at your kid's soccer game. Like, it doesn't have to have networking event at the end of the title in order for you to view that as a networking opportunity. I talk to everybody. I don't care if you're the janitor. You don't know who the janitor's cousin is.
Right.
You should interact with everyone as if you just genuinely want to connect with them and be curious about who they are and connect. Like, for me, that's I've learned about myself, because obviously I've done a lot of work, internal work, to kind of get to this place. But the thing that I learned about myself is that I'm obsessively curious. Like, I want to learn new things. I want to meet new people. I want to find out, where'd you go to school? How'd you get that middle name? That's interesting. Like, where were you born? Like, why'd you pick that color? Like, I'm just that person. I'm curious. And I think if you come from a genuine place of curiosity when you're interacting with people, it doesn't feel like forced networking. You're just getting to know them, learning more.
That's a lesson that I learned at a very young age, that there's always something that you have to learn from somebody, including the person living underneath the bridge.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing I think, if I could just add for networking, for people who have challenges with networking, the other thing is, as humans, especially Americans, we tend to focus more on ourselves, which is the wrong thing to do. Like, I think a lot of people make networking awkward because they talk so much about themselves and want so many people to know about them and what they do and what their title is and how they're, how much money they're making or whatever. We focus so much on ourselves. But I think when you flip the script, if you would,
yes.
flip the script and focus on the other person and make that interaction about them, it's so much easier, because again, naturally, we like to talk about ourselves. So if you introduce yourself to someone and ask them about themselves, it's a really natural conversation. You don't have to, hi, my name is Tommy and I work in, and I do. That's the wrong move. Go in with a curiosity to learn about that person and seem genuinely interested in who they are and where they come from and what they do. And I feel like, more importantly, don't go straight into business.
Yes.
Because people like to work with people and people like to hire people. Get to know them as a person first. Make it relational. Learn more about them. Don't go straight to, what do you do for work? Or, I don't know, how long you've been at your job.
Go to the big talk.
Yeah. Or make the small talk about personal stuff. Not too personal, but, more relational, more getting to know them as a human, as opposed to their corporate persona or their professional persona, which so many people have, especially if they're not entrepreneurs.
So where do you find peace?
Peace. Anywhere there's water. Anywhere there's water. Actually, I know I told you I had 2 meetings this morning that I was feeling a little anxious about because it's kind of a big deal. But on the way here, I had a few minutes early. I was a few minutes early and I was nearby. So I said, let me just stop. I saw a bunch of trees and then there was also a stream there. So I just pulled over and went and walked along the stream for a few minutes and just, centered myself. So for me, and I'm a Cancer sign, so I won't go all horoscopy on you, but water is where I'm definitely drawn to, and it's peaceful for me. And I also learned about myself, mountains. I never knew this about myself, but living in Morocco for a year, there's mountains everywhere. And so I spent a lot of time in the mountains, and there's just an extreme amount of peace that I experienced from being in the mountains. And I crave like being in the mountains now, and being, just surrounded by nothingness is very peaceful for me.
I love that you have that ability to recognize the self-care that needs to happen to keep you intentional with your life.
I try. It's hard in entrepreneurship, because the thing about working for yourself is if you're not working, you're not making money, or at least you're not creating additional streams for money. So we have this work mode. So as an entrepreneur, you have to be so intentional about prioritizing yourself and your self-care. And that for me comes in ebbs and flows. Like if you meet me, or if you met me this week, I look like a chaotic person who hasn't gotten any real sleep. Like I haven't really slept like more than 3 hours probably each day in like the last week, because I've been working on preparing for this meeting that I had today. So, I mean, it comes in waves, right? And then sometimes you'll meet me and it looks like I'm just chill and I don't even work because I'm having so much peace and free time and relaxation. So I think for again, entrepreneurs, it's just important to be open and flexible, because so much of what we do is in waves and temporary and unknown.
What object would you save if your house was on fire?
Nothing. I genuinely, I feel so good being able to say this, actually. Such a great place. I genuinely, unless you call my daughter an object, I genuinely have no connection to material things, which I could not have said 4 years ago. I swear, like I had a house full of shit, an attic full of stuff I never saw. But with the idea of knowing that I was going to live abroad, and because I'm an extremist, I do everything to the extreme. So I lived abroad for 3 years out of a carry-on. So I didn't even have a bunch of checked bags. I didn't do checked bags. I did none of that. I lived out of a carry-on for 3 years while abroad. And so obviously that requires a lot of life editing and purging and kind of letting go. So I did that work already. So for me, and coming back to this, I just don't have a huge connection to things, because I just found them, again, to be unfulfilling. And for me, the goal is to be fulfilled. And I found that things don't do that for me, because I had been there, done that, like I tried that. I had money, I bought stuff. It just didn't do it for me. And there was a time when it did, when buying a new outfit and feeling cute just, made my whole entire day. But now, like, I'm sitting here in a $3 thrift store dress. Like, I could care less. It's a cute dress, though. Yeah, for real. I have a great thrift store. But for me, I'm just not driven by things, and I have no connection to material things. I guess I feel like the one thing I did have while I was abroad was my passport. Like, that's my most valuable possession, is my passport. So, but being in America, it's not that big of a deal. So if my house is burning down here, I wouldn't worry about going and get my passport. I'd just get another one. But while I was abroad and living out of my suitcase, the one thing that I did value was my passport. So I always kept it on me. I never left it at my place or whatever. It was always tucked away. So I did put a large emphasis on my passport. So I would say that's the most valuable thing to me.
As we wrap up this episode, tell us, what's your next big adventure and how can people get in contact with you?
Oh, gosh. Normally that wouldn't be a tough question, right? But because the universe has a sense of humor and is always playing tricks on you, you think you have a plan.
Yeah.
But then they say, wait, nope, we got this for you. So I thought I had a plan, but that might be changing now. So I can't exactly say what's next, but a big move and an ability to make an impact like I would like to make it is in the works. So we'll see, but I'm definitely hoping to make a big impact. But the best way to stay in contact with me or get in contact with me is on my Instagram. On IG, I am designed by L, just the letter L, designed with ED, designed by L is my Instagram handle. That's the best way. And that has my email, and every other way to contact me is via my Instagram.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and showing us how you decided to flip the script and design a life that's in purpose and leading with impact.
Thanks for having me, Shlee. I appreciate it. This was fun. We'll have to do it again.
Thank you so much. If you found even the smallest nugget of wisdom in this episode, share it with a friend and your friend will thank you. Let's continue the conversation with like-minded leaders and join us on Facebook at Go Flip the Script. Until next time, I challenge you to incorporate what you learned today to evolve your leadership impact.